The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame. Turn your memorabilia into a work of art.
This is the Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates and by Renewal by Anderson, with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. We have a packed show for you today. Today's show, of course, brought to you by Bill Hotz and Associates. I always need to say that right off the top of the show. Today's show, we're going to have a lot of SEC meetings, a lot of news coming out of the SEC this week, but also national writers talking about Butch Jones in a number of different ways. We'll talk about some ADs in the league are putting their coaches on a hot seat. Some are trying to take them off. What should John Curry do in terms of Butch Jones' security? Should he even comment at all? A lot of stuff to cover, some interesting numbers and facts. A lot of quotes that you might have missed this week. We're going to have them all today. It's me reading to you for quite a bit, and then we'll get a reaction from a really good panel. First segment of our show, let me read this to you. Bill Hotz and Associates, folks, they're the ones that bring this to you. If you've ever been injured in a car accident at the cause of a careless driver, finding the right attorney, that's the difference between paying your medical bills or declaring bankruptcy, depending on how serious it is. For 30 years, Bill Hotz and Associates have fought and won for the victims in avoidable car accidents. Take down their number, take down their website. Remember, Bill Hotz and Associates, if you ever find yourself in that kind of jam. When I find myself in a jam, it's usually because the four people who are with me today, I'm just kidding, you're the ones that dig me out of the jam. Bob Hodge, Jimmy Himes, Josh Ward, Chuck Cavaliers. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here today. We'll just dive right in. Butch Jones was in the national press a couple of times this week for different reasons. First, Dan Wolken of USA Today tackled Jones' penchant for positivity and how UT Twitter responds to that. Let's go ahead and take a look at these graphics if we could. Now, up at the top, you don't have to read all this. I just wanted you to see it. But up at the top, Butch Jones saying very positive things about what the program's done, how consistent they've been. Wolken writes, on its face, nothing about that answer should offend the sensibilities of a fan base that is desperate to contend with Alabama or just win in a down SEC East. But given that Jones is 14-18 in the conference and coming off a season in which he blew a trip to the championship game by losing to Carolina and Vandy, it's questionable at best whether Tennessee is actually contending to win championships. Combined with Jones' much-mocked champions of life quote in December, it's hard to blame Vols fans for thinking their coach is Pollyanna-ish at best and delusional at worst about his own record. And it's gotten to the point where every word out of his mouth is now the subject of a forensic analysis among Tennessee fans. Let's move to the second part here. This season is going to be crucial and potentially difficult a difficult one for the relationship between Jones' mouth and Tennessee's fans' Twitter accounts. The Vols have turned over a lot of talent, including quarterback, yada, yada, yada. There could be one more backward step before the Vols are primed for another run in the East. It would probably be better for everyone if Tennessee fans just chilled out on every inane slogan and prepackaged narrative Jones comes up with to justify his tenure. But that train may already be too far off the tracks. In the end, whether Jones can do the job at the level Tennessee expects will be abundantly clear with or without the noise. First part of my question for you is, does Butch Jones hear too much? Is he listening too much? He talks about being. I'm gonna reply. So
like
dive in carefully. I've got something to come back at. It's just gonna be a good volley. Does he hear too much? Too big of rabbit ears?
I'm going to say no now. No, I think he does. But I think it comes from a natural reason. Central Michigan, dying to get any kind of publicity you can. If a reporter puts a microphone in your face, you're going to talk because why? It's Central Michigan and you probably got, 5 reporters there? Maybe. Cincinnati, more or less the same thing. You were way down the list in Cincinnati. You come to Tennessee, and I think he had grown up in a way in his coaching, desperate to talk to the media. So, yes, I think he does talk a little bit too much at times, and I also think he does hear too much at times.
I agree. I think he hears too much, but I'll caveat that in a second. Guys, does he need to cool it with some of the explanations and positivity? Do you think he's got rabbit ears?
Well, he's got rabbit ears. I don't think there's any doubt. And actually, I've talked to him about it. I saw him in Destin, and we had a conversation about that. And
fist fight.
And he has rabbit ears, except he won't listen to me because I told him to quit reading all that stuff, and he just has a tendency to do it and then overreact to it. And I think he gets bothered by that. And even if it's 2 or 3 people, it's more than that. But he just seems to remember and hear the negative things that are said about his program. And look, he's done a good job.
Uh-huh.
He hadn't done a great job because he hadn't won an East Division yet, but he's done a good job of getting this program to where it's more competitive.
I would first start off by saying you can never listen to too much sports talk radio or talk shows on TV. I want to be very clear about that. But I would say yes overall. But going down to Destin, I thought that Butch Jones, part of his message would be some kind of defense of his program. What I would say, if that's going to happen, because I fully expected that it would, talk about the positives that are happening moving forward. They're doing well in recruiting. They have some talent that will be taking over. I would be trying to talk about the future instead of still trying to defend the past.
Well, I mean, he's trying to turn the volume down a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit too loud. I think he's so much about recruiting. And I think this has gotten to the point, we've talked about it, John, I think the social media response at Tennessee is more negative than just about anywhere in college football. And to me, it reminds me a little bit of the people on Facebook that make the political comments. You're not going to change anybody's mind by what you put out there. So, I mean, it's the rabbit ears, yeah.
I think he hears too much. I do think you're right, though. I think, as Dan Wolkin points out, it would be better if we didn't do a forensic deep dive into every comment he makes. Everything now, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy now. Everyone sits and waits for him to say anything, and whether it's controversial or not, they get mad about it and respond on Twitter, and it's a small group. I mean, the number of people in this country who use Twitter is 20% of the population. Not a huge chunk of the population to begin with, and it's mainly young, angry men. Like me. I'm not that young, but I'm an angry man. But I do think one thing where I think fans don't get it, and I agree, he listens too much. He does. But this is what fans need to keep in mind. How often do I talk about perspective? About when you're just looking at UT, this all stands out, and when you back up and look elsewhere, oh, I think all coaches listen too much. Let me give you some examples, all right? We got some quotes here. Let's go ahead and put these up. First, a couple of years ago, Dabo Swinney was asked about Clemsoning. All the fans used to talk about them blowing a game to some unranked team. He went off. Swinney was asked if his team had put aside Clemsoning, a term that detractors had created to explain bad things that happened to good Tigers teams. Swinney replied, "This football team has shown up. What else do we have to do? I can't believe I have to come here with a 5-0 football team and talk about Clemsoning. It shouldn't be in the conversation. I'm sick of it. I don't even know why you bring up the dadgum word. How about these other teams who lose to unranked teams all the time? We ain't lost to anyone unranked since 2011, but I have to come to a press conference in 2015, get asked that? That's all media bull crap." And then he went on to list all of the teams they've beaten: Florida State, Ohio State, okay? Now, Nick Saban, just this past offseason, was asked, after that national championship game when you blew the lead, do you feel you need to go to more ball control offense? He went off. Just had a dream about that or what? Where are you getting that is what he asked the reporter. Just have a dream about it or what? If we'd caught some passes in the national title game, we had some guys open, we wouldn't have had to control the ball. We would have scored more touchdowns. Can you imagine how Tennessee fans would soil themselves if Butch Jones ever said, well, if we hadn't had those drop passes? Next one. We got the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I'm not even going to go through this whole thing, but the head coach of the Cavaliers came out and said, yeah, I have the hardest job by far. It's the hardest job in the NBA. I'm going to guess the coach of the Brooklyn Nets would argue. The point is, all these guys listen. They all hear the negatives. They all run their mouths and talk positive. Does Butch Jones need to cool it? I'm the one that says Belichick him. Just get out there, do a 5-minute press conference, say yay or nay, and leave. He does need to. But the idea that he's the only one doing this, I don't think Tennessee fans grasp that he's not that much different than other guys, I don't think. If we were covering all these other guys, we'd hear a lot of it too. Now, he may be a little worse than a Philip Fulmer was. I don't know that Lane Kiffin really cared. But again, I think a lot of these guys do this, and we need the perspective of that rather than just, he's the only coach in the country doing this. No, he's not.
No, and if you look at a lot of the successful head coaches, don't you guys think they're a little bit of the control freak in them? I mean, that's how they got to be where they are, and this is one thing they can't control.
That's a good point.
One thing I think also when you're defending your program is to make sure you're accurate. It's not accurate to say you've contended for a championship every year. Now, if you want to say you've contended for the East Division each of the last 2 years, that's fine. But don't say you've contended every year. I think that's one of the things that fans look at and don't like.
Yeah, and Butch Jones said that he said something kind of like that. He said we've competed consistently. But, yeah, the last 2 years you could argue he's competed.
Right, not the first
Not the first two. All right, interesting stuff. We got another writer who goes in a different direction with Butch Jones a little later. We'll discuss that too. But next, Butch Jones said yesterday that his defensive line is getting healthy. That sounds good. How big of a worry is it still? Come on back.